Okay, let's take a look at this. OBS is running. Everything else set to silent. I think we're ready to go. Let's get started. There it goes. Alright. Hello, Shadowcat back. And we're back to work on the Warhammer 40k module, which is easily the biggest module we've done at this point. I mean, Final Fantasy was pretty big. Wheel of Time was pretty complicated. But this is a lot. I mean, mostly since the Tower it's a lot because of all the equipment they've got that we gotta go through. But just, it's a lot. I mean, a lot of it's not too hard. Most of it's just a lot of guns and stuff, so it's just a matter of balancing, you know, what's better, what's not better. And perhaps we've been doing maybe not as good a job at that. I feel like we probably should have put in a lot more racial benefits for this stuff. Because we're balancing this stuff against the rest of the weapons. But it's kind of a matter of what benefit do you get for being the race who's doing or who's using it? Like, I like the Tau armor we did. Because Tau armor is more effective if you are a Tau using it. But when we look at like the Kroot rifle, there's no benefit if you're actually a Kroot. Now, to be fair, the Kroot rifle is both a range and a melee weapon, which is unique in Starfinder. So there are some benefits. Today, however, we are going with fusion weapons. We are delivering unto the Tau the power of the sun. And much like the Kroot guns, this is going to be mostly vehicle weapons. So there's going to be fusion blasters, fusion cannons, cascade things, fusion blades, which are also vehicle weapons, and then maybe a fusion torch? I'm not sure. We're going to look into that one. So that's what we're going to work on today, and if we have time, we'll maybe look into other Tau weapons as well. But there's a lot of fusion weapons we got to go through if we want to get that done. So let's go ahead and pull up our browser. And we will get our spreadsheet. There we go. And we can get started on this. So the first thing we got to do, I think it's the first thing we got to do. First thing we got to do is we got to find the fusion stuff. So we've got missile weapons, marker. Hold on, here we go. Fusion weapons, right here. All right, fusion weapons. So Tau fusion weapons are similar in effect to the technology employed in the Imperial Melta weapons, and that they use small fusion reactors to produce blasts of intense heat. They usually have short ranges, but are more dangerous the closer they are used to the target. Interesting. Now there's a few ways we could probably work that. Yeah, there's a few ways we could probably work that. And I'm already thinking it over. It's like, perhaps we should have a damage per square when we're building these. Like, give it a max damage, and then every square distance you have, take away, say, 1 dice. Which means that we wouldn't actually have to set a solid range on things, because we could say, okay, this gun does, I don't know, 4d4 damage. And then if it loses 1 dice every square, then 2 squares away is only 3d4, 3 squares away is only 2d4, 4 squares away is only 1d4, and while technically at 5 squares away you could roll a hit, it just wouldn't do enough damage for it to matter. At least that's my initial thoughts. We'll see what we're doing here. So the first thing we're going to do is the fusion blaster. So let's go ahead and move over to here again. Yeah, we just did the marker lights, so those things are pretty cool. We're going to copy this, because we're going to need this. And we're going to come down here to fusion weapons. Now, much like the EMP weapons that we did up here, where we had just kind of a broad scope that affects all EMP weapons, I think we're going to do the same thing here. And so what I think we're going to do is, I'm going to put in here, damage fall off. And that should be fine. Now, this does exclusively like fire damage, because it's basically just fire. So we're going to say fusion blaster. And then we'll do this. So it says here, fusion blasters are short-range Tau melta weapons capable of reducing even the most heavily armored vehicles and fortifications to slag in the blink of an eye with its nuclear fusion-powered blast. The fusion blaster is most commonly utilized as a weapon system on battlesuits. The fusion blaster is similar both technologically and tactically to the Imperial Meltagun, albeit it possesses a longer range and is most commonly employed by more mobile units. Many battlesuit pilots have become adept at striking and hunting down enemy armor, using the mobility gained from their jetpacks to outflank the enemy and attack the more vulnerable rear and side armor of their targets. Fusion blasters can also be used to eliminate heavy armored enemy infantry, as the sheer heat will melt all kinds of armor, as well as the wearer. Now, interestingly here, it says this is used on battlesuits. And that's a very broad category. Now, I had originally written down that I thought the fusion blaster should be a heavy weapon. But battlesuits are, well, they can be pretty big. We've got the fusion cannon, which is a vehicle weapon, the fusion cascade, which is a vehicle weapon, the fusion blade was a vehicle weapon. And the reason I think I said that, right, is because the fusion cannon says it's a larger version of the battlesuit mounted fusion blaster and fires blasts of melta energy. And this goes on a hammerhead, which is absolutely a vehicle. This isn't even a battlesuit, it's a tank. So that's got to go on there. The fusion cascade goes on hazard battlesuits, which are not the smallest ones. So what we may end up doing is, as much as I hate to do this, perhaps these will all have to be vehicle weapons, and what we'll have is simply fusion cannons can remain large vehicle weapons, fusion cascades can remain medium vehicle weapons, and fusion blasters will have to be small vehicle weapons, which would put them on the same tier as fusion blades, with the only caveat there being that, of course, fusion blasters will have range, fusion blades will not, and will give the fusion blades more damage to help compensate for that. Maybe. Maybe not. Maybe we can have it so a fusion blaster... No, I can't do that. If I made it so that they do the same damage at the same range, there's no reason to take a blade. So the fusion blade... Yeah, the fusion blade will have to do just a little bit more damage, but it will have less range. And so that's how we'll do that. This will be a vehicle weapon, and it will be small. Okay. Which means that rather than these headers, we don't want those headers. We're going to want... Here we go. We want vehicle weapons. It's also going to make these a lot faster. Oh, and JP's in the chat. Hello, JP. JP says, where does the blue shell go? I haven't made stats for that yet. Ooh, but wouldn't that be fun? What if I somehow actually did that? What if I actually made like a Mario Kart version of a tabletop game? Could it even be done? Now you got me thinking. I shouldn't be thinking like this right now. We're busy right now. Look what you've done to me. Okay, I have a solution for this. Okay, we're gonna come back here. Mario Kart racing, or general racing module. And I have no idea what that's going to fit in. Look what you've done to me. Look what you've done to me. No, I mean, it could be fun. Because it would not necessarily be as simple as, it would not necessarily be as simple as just, you know, what speed are you, and thus you will have to travel at, you know, this many speeds. What it would probably have to be is whatever components you're using for your vehicle would give you more dice. And so you would be allowed to roll X number of dice to see how fast you go, which means that you could build a car to go really fast and just throw lots of dice. But if you rolled really poorly, somebody with less dice but more luck could technically overtake you. And then we have to figure out things like handling, acceleration, you know, all the same general stats from racing games. And then we can get into fun things like blue shells and banana peels. And JP says, would have to be by racing season? I don't know. I'm not even sure how we would do it. But you know what? It's on the list. Okay? It's on the list. There's too many things on the list now. I will never be done with this list. Actually, that's probably a good thing, really. Okay, but anyway, we're not doing that right now. It's on the list. We won't forget it now. Also, that's usually something Tux would do. Tux is usually the one that sends me into tangents like that. I'm afraid that Tux is a bad influence on you. Not sure if I like you seeing him anymore. Okay. Fusion Blaster. Fusion Cannon. Fusion Cascade. And Fusion Blade. JP says, okay, that was only a 4-minute sidetrack. Oh, you tried. You tried. Okay, so yeah, we've got fusion blasters, cannons, cascades, blades, and then torches. Which this does say it's on the Vanguard Void Battlesuit, so that's technically going to be another vehicle weapon. So, fusion torch. And JP says, Fusion Blaster sounds like Metroid. I've never actually played Metroid. Not sure if I could at this point. I mean, the interesting thing is, I think I have it. Because I have a Nintendo Switch, and because I have the Nintendo Online service, I have their NES and SNES stuff. Oh, come on, OBS. Work with me here. Anyway, I don't have the higher tier of the Nintendo Online service, so I only have the NES and SNES. But I do actually have a lot of access to those games. And a lot of those games I've never played. It's like, I never played the original Zelda. And I've actually kind of avoided Zelda games entirely because I never played the original Zelda. And I've tried a couple of times to pick it up and play it, but it's hard to go backwards. Same thing with Metroid. I know there's a lot of Metroid games, but I've never played the first one, and so I kind of ignored the rest of them. And part of me has wondered if maybe I should do a series of going back and just doing the old NES games. JP says, time for a retro stream. I don't know. If there was a lot of interest in that, I might do it. I don't know if it would necessarily be a stream. It would probably end up being a series in the main part of the channel. But I don't know if anybody would be interested. I don't know if anybody would be especially interested in watching somebody like me do it. Because I can guarantee you that anybody who grew up playing these games would find it absolutely infuriating watching me trying to go through and doing it. Because anybody who grew up playing the original Zelda game, who, you know, beat it like 6 or 7 times, watching me fumble around and try to find all these different dungeons and stuff, that's how you do it, right? You have to, like, travel the map and find dungeons? I don't know. I'm making an assumption. I'm sure that they would just be pulling their hair out the entire time. Do it as a chill stream? I don't usually do the chill streams that often. That's a rare thing. Yesterday was a chill stream just because I didn't want to drop anything really heavy right before Christmas. And, I mean, we kind of did anyway when we got into the whole topic of police and everything, but wasn't the intention. Play Q*bert. I could play Q*bert. I grew up with an Atari. I can do Q*bert. I could do Q*bert all day. However, that's not a very long game. Okay, back to fusion weapons. Let's see. Fusion blasters are going to be small. These are going to be large, medium, small, and small. Now, the fusion torches, I think, are going to be a little bit different. But let's see. Range. Okay, the range on these is going to be special. Oh, wait, except for the fusion blade. The fusion blade, since it is a small weapon, the fusion blade range is going to be 10 feet. And the fusion torch will also be 10 feet. Alright, now. Damage. Well, actually, hold on. Let's do this first. Damage fall off. So the damage fall off. We need to better define this. So the damage fall off is this. Damage is reduced by 1 die per range increment. And the range increment is... I know. The range increment will be 5 feet per size category. Alright, that means that if you wanted to get, say, a fusion blaster, okay? And a fusion blaster, you slap that thing on one of the smaller battle suits. So, I forget my battle suits again. Where's the thing? Here's the thing. Open that in a new tab so I can actually read it. Okay. So, like, if that is a pilot, then this is a stealth battle suit, which means that this is probably going to be the smallest vehicle you have. I mean, I'm not even sure if this is technically a vehicle or if this is powered armor. This is actually probably powered armor. And so cannot really handle a vehicle suit. So we would have to actually go up to, I guess, a crisis battle suit to really call it the first vehicle. Which would make this, I don't know, if a motorcycle is technically the smallest vehicle, and I think a motorcycle would be tiny. Let me go ahead and check this. Go away. Yes. Let's see. Oh, JP says if you want to add more realism, add a shell shock roll mechanic to battle. I could. That doesn't necessarily need to go into this part of the module. But if you think it would be worth it, it's possible we could do that. That is... Okay, let me take a break for this to explain a couple of things. When it comes to tabletop gaming, there's a lot of things that have to come together to make a tabletop game work, okay? The first and foremost one, of course, is DM and players, okay? You need to have a good DM who knows how to run a game. And there's a lot that goes into that I'm not going to break down, but you have to have a DM who can both arrange the game, whether that is opening up a pre-built module or designing the game themselves like I do. They have to be able to coordinate with players, to schedule the events. There's a lot that goes into DMing. Being a player, there's a lot the player is responsible for too. They had to be responsible for coordinating with the DM and the other players to get together on time. They have to be able, or they have to know their character and know how to use it. As a player, you don't have to know everything. But you do have to know your character and how to use your tools. Which, that means that there are some characters that are harder to play than other characters. If you are playing a barbarian, you generally only need to know how much damage your weapons do, how far you move, and how does your character change between normal and rage mode. Now you would think that fighters might be a little bit easier than that. However, fighters are like martial wizards. Wizards get spells, fighters get feats. And fighters usually get a lot of them, which means that a fighter will have an entire portfolio of feats to choose from at any given time, just like a wizard will have an entire book of spells to choose from at any given time. And the fighter has to know how to play every single one of those feats, when to use it, what it does, and you have to know how to do this, because when it's your turn, you cannot be sitting there saying, okay, my turn, I want to... Hold on, let me check my sheet. What do I have available? Wait, I have Greater Cleave. How does Greater Cleave work again? You can't do that. Okay, you're holding up the entire game now. So there are certain responsibilities for the GM and the players, and this is at a base level, okay? You have to get these things together before you can have a game. Now, in addition to that, you have to have a group of players with common cause. Which is to say, there are a lot of different levels when it comes to tabletop gaming. And this usually corresponds to the different kinds of DMs out there, okay? You will have DMs who are storytellers, okay? You have DMs who are storytellers. And you can tell a storyteller DM because when they make the game, they will write out an entire book for their campaign. Okay, these are not people that are going to use modules. I suppose I could have started with that and said there are module DMs who will literally just buy a module and say, hey, do you guys want to play this module or this module, okay? And then they'll simply unpack the module, they'll read through the book, as much as they need to, they'll give everyone their characters, and you guys can play a game. That's one kind of DM. Storytellers, though, would never use a module because they want to write the next Lord of the Rings. And so they will write out this rich history for the entire area. They will populate the map with cities and towns and villages and hamlets. They will create points of interest on the map. They will have trade routes. They will have different cultures, different religions. They will write out all of the holidays and celebrations. They will have different calendars for different species. They will do all of this work so that by the time you go in there, every single rock you turn over will have a story behind it for you to become immersed in. It is like the cream of the crop for role-playing gamers. This is literally for the type of player who's going to go in and it's one of those tables where names are banned. Like, you are not allowed to refer to yourself by your name unless you begin a sentence with Dungeon Master, and then you can say I, or you can use somebody else's name. Like if it was all of us in there, you could say Dungeon Master Tux on his last turn did this thing, and even that might not be acceptable because you might have to refer to Tux's character by name. Usually these are very strict tables, and they will require you to do things like take notes. My particular kind of table, I run as more of a technical table. Whereas I don't usually get into a lot of the story. I will absolutely have stories in my game. I will have certain legends for you to explore, and I'm pretty good at generating a culture on the fly because I use a lot of tables and generators. But I don't go through and finely tune my entire world. I'll do the absolute bare minimum for that so that I can tell you exactly where you're wandering into and what you're wandering into, but I focus more on mechanics. And I'll get more into that in a minute. The last type, so we've already got our modules, we've got storytellers, we've got technicals. The last type are going to be dungeon crawlers. These are your combat DMs, who really, when you go into their stuff, they might be using a module, they might be doing their own custom game, but the one thing they have in common is that you will be in combat almost the entire way. These will be games where you will be forced into resource management, because you'll be using potions and scrolls and things like that. You'll be focusing on things like action economy, saying that, we're up against 7 goblins and 2 gnolls. There's 4 of us. We only have so many actions per turn. They have so many actions per turn. And so we need to focus on how to utilize our actions for the highest efficiency. These games will usually have a lot of table talk, a lot of strategizing on every single turn, trying to maximize your efficiency. The idea of lore in these games, unless it is absolutely pertinent to a fight that you're in, will be almost non-existent. For myself, though, like I said, I'm a technical DM. I focus on things like the mechanics. And the reason why I focus on the mechanics is because I believe that mechanics are tools. Now, when I say tools, I mean I can throw you into a garage, okay? And I can give you a little toolkit that I went and bought at Walmart. It's got a socket and some socket, or it's got a ratchet and some sockets in there. It's got a Phillips screwdriver. It's got a standard screwdriver. It's got a collection of wrenches. And it's got a little 3-ounce hammer or something in it. Maybe a 5-ounce hammer. I don't know. It's a little hammer. And I say, okay, build me something. You can build something with that, okay? I'm not going to say you can't. But if I was to throw you into a race car garage where they have entire cabinets of tools, where they have every wrench known to man, every socket known to man. They have every single driver you can think of. They have cutters, they have welders, they have shapers, they have everything. And I tell you to build something. You can build basically anything in one of those garages. Which is how I look at this. The more tools I have in place, the better I can make the game. Which is why when I do these modules, I look at this and I say, with all of the weapons and tools and races and everything else that I'm putting in here, what can we build with this? Because I don't have to do this, I don't have to do this module. If I wanted to, I could say, we're going to go ahead and we're going to play a Warhammer 40k module, okay? We're going to do that. However, I don't have a module, so we're just going to be limited to what comes in the Starfinder stuff, which means that we are limited to these races, okay? And since there's not really any of these races, a lot of these would be considered Xenos. You're going to be restricted to humans, which also means that we're going to be restricted basically to playing Imperial Guards, because I just don't have anything to make Astartes out of. So you're going to be restricted to humans. You'll have a starship, but your starship will be restricted to what we can do here. We'll play in the Warhammer 40k universe, but, I mean, I'll have to make, like, some Tau monsters, and some Orc monsters, and Necron monsters, and that's it. Technically, we can do that. But that's a very narrow game. And so I put together these mechanics to help broaden it, and now, just from what we've done so far, I have given you the ability to say you can play an Astartes, you can play a Guardsman, you can play a Tech Priest, you can play a Skitarii, you can play a Tau of any caste you want, you can play a Kroot, you can play a Vespid, and we're not even done yet. So, by adding these mechanics into the game, I have given you more options. But even this is on a sliding scale. Because we talk about adding mechanics, there are other rules that we can add that I can make you keep track of. For example, I can make you keep track of food and water. Generally speaking, when I play, especially since I've mostly played Pathfinder, here's the rule of thumb that I go by. Unless otherwise stated, water is always available. So, unless you are in a desert or a frozen place or anything like that, if you're on like a volcanic mountain, unless you are in one of these extreme environments, water is always available. So all you have to do is find it. And in general, I will say the only food that you really need is you can just buy rations, and there you go, you're good. And that's usually good for people. However, we can always get more technical. And I can say, okay, we're going to do this with a higher level of realism in the game. Okay? And now you are going to have to keep track of both your food and your water. You will need to have food rations and water rations. We're also going to make a distinction between prepared food and raw food, which means if you have somebody in the party with a high survival skill, you can hunt for food. However, hunting for food does not necessarily give you food. You will also need to have somebody who can cook the food, which means that you run the risk of potentially ruining the food, or perhaps you run the risk of introducing food poisoning into the party. At the same time, you will need to keep track of your water rations, which means that just like you use survival to find food, you will have to use your survival skill to find water. Which means that on some days you might find food, but no water. On other days, you might find water, but no food. And now you are forced into a position where you actually have to maybe start rationing things. Maybe you're in an area where water is scarce, and so you have to ration your water, maybe take a penalty to skills due to mild dehydration to make sure that you don't go below mild dehydration. Maybe you fight with starvation at some points. Maybe your cook screwed up and now everyone's dealing with food poisoning. These are things we can add into the game. Unfortunately, however, these are also things that tend to be overwhelming for players. I've tested this out with several different groups, and most groups agree that they don't want to deal with anything on that level. And Tux says, what if I want to eat Blizzard Star? Well, first off, hello Tux, it's good to see you in the chat. And secondly, I'm pretty sure you have to kill her first. So, good luck with that. Anyway, the point here is, there are a lot of extra rules that can be added if the players are willing to play with the rules. A lot of times they're not. Which brings me back to your comment. If we wanted to add more realism, we could add a shell shock roll mechanic to battle. But here's the thing. Number one, when does it trigger? Because when we're talking about shell shock, we're talking about psychological trauma. This could happen anywhere from anytime somebody goes down, you know, they've been reduced to like 0 hit points, but they're not dead yet, to anytime somebody gets hit with a critical hit. Because a critical hit could be lethal. I mean, getting hit with a critical hit is basically the same as an actual soldier. Because like you said, while you were active duty, you played with this. This would be the equivalent of like an active soldier, you're out on patrol, and maybe your vehicle gets hit by an IED. Okay? Maybe you're walking and either you or somebody in your squad gets taken out by a sniper. That's the shit that causes PTSD, which is shell shock. And then you have to make a will save, I guess, to resist it. But once you have it, number one, how debilitating is it? Number two, is there any way to treat it? How long does it last? Is it going to be lifelong? Is it lifelong without treatment and you can possibly treat it to make it more manageable? These are a lot of really, really interesting questions. And it's a lot of really interesting mechanics to keep track of. But it only works if you have a collection of players who want to. Because if you try to introduce this into a party of players who don't want that level of realism, at best, they're going to be unhappy with the game, and at worst, they're simply going to leave the game. And so that's why when you suggest adding shell shock to it, I have to really put a caveat on there and say, I'm not opposed to it. And if you want, we could go ahead and write up rules for that. Especially since Warhammer 40k does have a morale system baked in already. I mean, I don't remember exactly how it goes. All I know is that if you have like a squad of 10 people, I think it's every time you lose somebody, you have to make a roll. And if you roll over the morale of the squad, the entire squad just like retreats and it's gone. So Warhammer 40k already has a morale system in it. Because you're all player characters, having shell shock in there could work. But that is something that we would have to discuss with the player, or with the gaming group as a whole before the game even started. And I'm not going to lie to you. The odds of the other players going along with it are not great. Just because the players are not going to want to deal with things like that. Another good example is I came across a gaming mechanic called Death and Maiming. JP says it was just a passing thought. No, it's a good thought, okay? Don't minimize this one. It's a good thought. It's a good suggestion. But like I was going to say, I came across a module once upon a time that was Death and Maiming. And what it was is every time your character would be dealt lethal damage. So, I mean, you're playing your game and you're dealt lethal damage. So, you get hit by like a Warhammer or something, and it deals 15 damage, but you only had 7, okay? You just got walloped. Instead of your character going like straight down to -8 hit points, and maybe you're dead. I don't know. Maybe you're dead. We would instead roll on the death and maiming chart. And what the death and maiming chart would do is, first off, it was divided up by the type of damage you took. So, if you took bludgeoning damage, you would roll on this table, slashing damage, this table, piercing damage, this table. And so, bludgeoning damage was usually regarded as being kind of lesser. The next worst would be piercing, the next worst would be slashing. But it means that, you know, you get hit by like a Warhammer, okay, and you go down to negative hit points, and you're gonna die. You instead roll, and it was like 10 or 12 things on the list. If you rolled a 1, you are just dead. Period. However, the higher up you rolled, the lesser your injuries were. So, for example, if a 1 is dead, rolling a 2 might have the Warhammer absolutely mangle your leg. Like to the point where it will never heal. So you had a Warhammer hit you, it absolutely obliterated your femur, okay? Which means that without some kind of magical intervention, your character will never walk again. Not without crutches. And I saw this table and I'm like, this is awesome. I thought this was going to be like the greatest thing ever. Because, like, maybe you're out there, maybe you're fighting somebody who's got, like, this big scimitar, okay? And you come in, they swing. You try to parry. So you roll your reflex save versus their attack roll, you failed. So they cleave you with that scimitar. Oh no! You just took, like, 3d12 damage. You roll on the death and maiming table. And it turns out that not only are you not dead, but unfortunately, they cut your arm off. Now you have 1 arm. Which means that, you know, you are going to start taking penalties on things. You take a penalty on anything that requires, like, well, 2 hands. You can no longer do things like climb. Or at least you take a major penalty on climbing. You can no longer use any 2-handed weapons. You can no longer dual wield. But you still are alive and you still have 1 arm. Could you imagine making or your character becoming some kind of legendary hero with 1 arm? Like perhaps you were a fighter, okay, which is why you were in the front. You got hit by the scimitar to begin with. Maybe you really loved using halberds. But instead, now that you've got this, maybe you're no longer using a halberd, maybe you switch to hand axes, and you go for cleaving with hand axes. Or you drop the axes altogether, you pick up like a rapier. And you start shunting points away from your strength and into your dexterity, and you become one of the greatest fencers ever. I thought that it would have great potential for making your characters even more unique and more legendary. And the response to it was, absolutely not. We don't want any part of this at all. If my character takes that kind of damage, please just let my character die. And I was like, really? Like, you would rather your character be dead than face even the smallest amount of like trouble? Any challenge at all? And yeah, as it turns out, that's how things were. My players wanted nothing to do with it. And so I was just kind of like, well, I mean, the players have spoken. They don't want it. The shell shock module would be a lot like that. So we can do it. We can absolutely do it. So don't forget that one. You can remind me later, maybe after we get done with all the individual factions, and before we go into doing things like vehicles in mass. But we can work on it. We can see what we can do with it. We can see what it looks like, and we can have it available as an option for when we get to the actual game. And then we can put it up there and say, look, the next game is going to be Warhammer 40k. We're going to be using this module. You saw it being built, but here's the reference sheets for it. By the way, before we get started, we have this list of optional mechanics that we can add to this. Like, for example, you mentioned the shell shock thing. Psychers might end up being an optional mechanic. Because if we're going to put psychers in the game, every single time you play with a psyker, you run the risk of just self-destructing. Every single psyker is a potential avenue for the warp to come into material space. And so, do we want to allow psychers in the game, or do we want to steer clear of that? Already, we saw some of this. When we were looking at... Oh, I gotta get my microphone out of the way. When we were looking at the races and we looked at the Kroot. And we said, the whole idea here of Kroot makes sense. However, this whole idea of replacing your ability scores or feats or skills or whatever with the things that you're eating, I don't know. I don't necessarily like that. Because you could really screw up your character, and there was a lot of resistance to this. In the case of the Kroot, though, you don't have to play a Kroot. You have a lot of other options. But when it comes to like having an overarching mechanic like that, we have to kind of put it up to a vote. See what people want to do. So like I said, we'll build it, we'll put it in our back pocket. And if we want to use it, we can. I'm all on board for it. I love the idea of new mechanics. And it could be very broad too, because shell shock and PTSD they don't always manifest in the same way. There can be a broad category of effects that shell shock could inflict upon people. There could be a broad category of triggers. I've seen it done in other games. Depending on like what the trauma was that did it, we could tie it to that, or we could just put a table in there and say what the trigger is. So for example, if the trigger for the shell shock happens to be fire related, then every time the character takes fire damage, they might have to roll against a morale break, and then they instantly have to flee. Which would really be unfortunate because fire damage is really common in combat, but could also be something really rare. Like maybe any time that they're exposed to zero gravity. How often are you exposed to zero gravity? Not very often. But, you know, that one time that you are, Tuck says that I vote that we play with a psyker and injury tables. I mean, we'll get there. We'll get there. Okay. Right, so we were working on fusion blasters, and I just finished off the damage fall off. The damage is reduced by 1 die per range increment. The increments are 5 feet per size category. Right, which means that a tiny thing, like a motorcycle, would have 5-foot range increments. And small vehicles would have 10-foot size increments, medium vehicles 15 size increments, and so on and so forth. Okay. So damage, fall off. There we go. And then the fusion blades. These are restricted to just 1 range increment. And on the subject of psychers, I mean, psychers are really going to be... Like, I don't know how much experience anybody in the chat has playing Dungeons & Dragons, but if you go back to Dungeons & Dragons 2nd edition, and technically it was there in 3rd edition, but it was really hard to find, and it basically disappeared after that. The Wild Mage. So when it came to wizards, there were different schools. You could have evokers, you could have diviners, you could have illusionists, things like that. Then there was the Wild Mage. And the Wild Mages were like wizards who never learned how to be wizards. And they had to figure this stuff all out on their own. They were more knowledgeable than sorcerers were, but they were more instinctive than wizards. And so what would happen is every time a wild mage would cast magic, they would have to make a concentration roll. And if they failed the if they failed the concentration roll, there was an entire table of wild magic effects. And they could do everything from doing absolutely nothing to literally spawning a fountain of gold out of their fingertips to literally self-destructing and doing X number of damage for every spell they had prepared. And that's basically what psychers are going to be. Because every single time a psyker uses their abilities, they're gonna have to make a concentration check. And if they fail the concentration check, bad things are gonna happen. And I will probably reserve for a crit fail on a concentration check, but if they crit fail a concentration check, they basically get split in half and become a demon. So, I mean, adding psychers to the game is a commitment. Not one to be taken lightly either. Okay, fusion blasters. Since these are vehicle weapons, we're gonna go ahead. Oh, what do we want to do for damage on these? I mean, let me look at the other vehicles. Let's see what the damage does look on these, because I don't think they ever really gave a whole lot of them. Where were they? Here we go. So they've got cannons, which are 4 dice. Well, actually, now that I think about this, a lot of these are any size. And so the bigger you get, the, or no, wait, hold on. Oh, no, wait, I was misinterpreting this. The size of the weapon is the size of the vehicle it has to be mounted on. So that's fine. The damage is determined by the mount that it goes on. And so that's fine. We can still have variable damage. The fusion blade, I think I'm going to go with plus 4 dice. And then the rest of these I think I'm going to do as a plus 3. Okay, and the reason being is all of these things being equal, if you're using a small vehicle, you can have a fusion blaster. However, I do believe that small vehicles are incapable of mounting medium-sized weapons. I would need to come up here. No, not this. Here we go. Vehicle weapons small. Okay, so this mounts a medium weapon, or no, hold on. Here we go. This mounts a small weapon in a vehicle. It deals 1d4 per purchase of the vehicle weapon. It can be purchased a number of times up to the size of the vehicle. Must be determined if this weapon does energy or kinetic damage. Weapons hold enough charge or shots for the purchase times the size of the vehicle. Any weapon damage can be doubled, but it limits the shots by half, or to half of the normal. Let's see. When selecting the weapon, a specific arc must be chosen. A medium weapon can be mounted on a small vehicle for the cost of 2 add-on slots. A vehicle weapon may only mount as many weapons on as its slots allow. See vehicle weapons for additional types. Okay, so technically speaking, if you wanted to add a medium-sized gun on like a motorcycle, it would just cost you 2 slots. And I don't see any restriction on that. It's literally just restricted by the number of slots it has, and the larger your vehicle is, the more. Okay, so having these all as a plus 3 is not actually going to work that well. There has to be an increasing ability for this. So I'm going to go ahead and say the Fusion Blaster does 2 damage, and the Fusion Cannon will do 4. The Fusion Blade, since it has to be used close, will do plus 5. Okay. So that gives more incentive for using the larger weapons, but it really just comes down to what can you mount. However, that leaves the Fusion Torch. Okay. The Fusion Torch is a utility tool issued to the XV-46 Vanguard Void battlesuits to aid them in exploring hazardous interior environments of space hulks. It is a short-ranged and very high-powered melta cutting tool, utilizing an atomic fusion reactor to generate an intensely hot beam capable of cutting through even the thickest of bulkheads and barriers. While designed to breach obstacles, it can also be used as an incredibly potent, if clumsy, close combat weapon capable of vaporizing anything that its wielder happens to target within reach of its beam. So, how do we use this? And how do we make it different from the fusion blade? I wonder, do we get a picture of fusion blades? No, we do not. And I'm going to guess we don't get a picture of fusion torches either. Okay. I mean, these are vehicle weapons, so the range increments are not really that much different. It's just going to be 1. How do we make this different? It does say it's a tool for, like, cutting through big bulkheads, which leads me to believe that this thing should be better at sundering than a fusion blade would be. Now, I don't know if you can actually make a sundering attempt in vehicle combat, because I've never really played a whole lot with vehicle combat. But perhaps we should. So what if we did this? What if we do increase the range of this to 2, okay? That means that if you are in a large mech, and since a large mech, how big is large? Let's see, size categories. Well, actually, hold on a second. So, we've got a medium walker. This vehicle is 8 feet wide, 10 feet long, 10 feet tall. So basically, it's just a 10-foot cube. But if we want to make it bigger, cargo large. Oh wait, here we go. Oversized. Oversized is what I want. Or just cargo oversized? Okay, hold on. I gotta actually scroll up and find this one myself. Cargo oversized. That's an add-on. Here we go. Oh, they put a hyphen in it. Okay, this increased the vehicle by 1 step, so small to medium, medium to large, large to huge. It increased the passengers by 20%, or cargo, which it increases cover by 1 step. Let's see. Double the size, height, width, and length. It also allows the addition of additional modifications. Okay, so if we're using the range increments, then that means that we would have a 20-foot cube that is our large battlesuit. And because it is tiny, small, medium, large, it has a 20-foot range increment, which means that the fusion blade could be used up to 40 feet away? That doesn't seem right. No, because it should only have a range equal to its size. So it's still got to be one size increment. It can't reach 40 feet away. We can't do that. That just doesn't make sense. So here's what I think we're gonna do. I think I got the idea. I think I got an idea. When we read this, it says fusion torch. It says it generates an immensely hot beam capable of cutting through even the thickest of bulkheads and barriers. While designed to breach obstacles, it can also be used as an incredibly potent, if clumsy, close combat weapon. I think I can do this with one term. Check this out. Disadvantage on attack, advantage on sunder. So, if you try to use this thing as a weapon, you'll have to roll twice and take the lesser of the two rolls. Okay? And that should be fine. You carry this thing, you know what you're doing. However, if you actually manage to land the hit and you just try to destroy part of whatever you're fighting, whether it's a vehicle or somebody in armor or whatever it is. Yeah. You get advantage on that sundering attempt. So you roll twice, and if both of the attacks hit, you try to sunder, you roll twice, take the better result, and destroy whatever it is you're targeting. We can make the damage the same as the sword. And I think that works. So it's absolutely a tool, but you can use it if you want to. This takes care of the clumsy and the sheer raw power of it. And actually, we can delete the damage fall off part because it only has one size increment. I like that. I think that makes for a sick tool. So if you happen to have a battle suit, if you happen to have a torch, there you go. Just cut anything in front of you. No door? Make a door. Now, do we have any other fusion weapons? I don't think so. Yeah, the next thing down here was marker lights, which we already did. Alright, so that does it. That's all the fusion stuff. However, while we're talking about vehicle weapons, phased plasma flamer. Yeah, okay, where is that? Smart missiles, seeker missiles, here we go. A phased plasma flamer. This is going to get ugly, isn't it? Oh, and also, one of the things we want to do here is this is going to be fire damage. Specifically, it is fire damage. And that's probably worth keeping in mind. Alright, so what does it say about the phased plasma flamer? First off, did we get a picture? We get a picture! I love it when we get pictures. Even if they aren't good pictures. That's really not a great picture, but I'll take it. Alright, so, phased plasma flamer. It is a large Tau triple-barreled rotary flamer weapon, capable of generating temperatures so hot that the emitted flames are in a plasma-like state that can vaporize even ceramite. As such, the weapon is deadly even to the most heavily armored infantry. The phased plasma can be fired in two modes: single canister, which only uses a single barrel, or a full rotation, which uses all three barrels to generate an extended flame burst, with the drawback of a small potential for danger and damage to the battlesuit, making use of it. All of the Yavara battlesuits wield phased plasma flamers as part of their standard armament. So, it sounds to me like a weapon that gets hot. And I do mean that in every meaning of the word. So, first thing we gotta do is box this in so it's separate. There we go. And then we get to work on the next one. Phased plasma flamer. Okay. Now, because this is a vehicle weapon, and it only goes on the Yavara battlesuits. Do I have a picture of that one? Let's see. This is a crisis battlesuit. These are so hard to read. This also says it's a crisis battlesuit. That is so hard to read. That says Riptide. I cannot even read this one. It's too blurry. What was a Yavara again? It is a new derivative of the Riptide battlesuit. Right! So, the Yavara is one of these. Which, I mean, yeah. It's one of these guys. That is a large battlesuit. At a minimum. Because, like, if that's a pilot, and he's about 2 meters tall, give or take, then, like, his leg is 4 meters, so 12 feet. And then if the torso is equal to the legs, we're talking about 16 meters times 3. That's like 16 times 3 be 32, 48. So, yeah, it's huge. Alright. So, it's going to be a huge weapon since it's exclusive to them. Alright, so phased plasma flamer, and we're going to split this one in two. Single shot and phased plasma flamer multi-shot. So the size is going to be huge. Okay, it's got to go on them. And the special, of course, on this thing is going to be the dual mode. So switch mode. As for range, does it say anything about range? It really does not. Let's go back. So it can be fired in 2 modes. Don't do that. Come back down here. There we go. Can be fired in 2 modes. Vaporizes ceramite. It does not say anything about that, but it is a flamer weapon, which means that its range isn't going to be enormous. Did we already do a flamer kind of weapon? Got neutron blasters, but they're not flamers. Kroot guns, not flamers. Vehicle ion weapons, also not flamers. Okay, well, since it fires out its projectiles in a plasma state, I think we can give it a little bit of a boost when it comes to its range. And so let's go ahead and call this thing... Well, the fusion weapons are low, or are rather short range, and these guys will go up to 5 feet per size category. So like on a large weapon, the fusion cannon, since that goes on a large, that's 20 feet per size category. It's got 4 dice, which means it will shoot 160 feet. I think we can do that with this one. So we'll go with 160 feet. Now, for damage. The damage on these things is going to be similar. And I'm going to say the damage is probably just going to be... Yeah, plus 4 dice sounds good. That'll be plus 4 dice. But with it in multi-shot mode, that could be a lot. So for this one, because it does get hot, how do we want to do this? I think what we're going to do is we're just going to do this on a critical failure, it'll get hot, which is lesser than what you would see in the Warhammer Tabletop game, because Warhammer Tabletop uses D6s, and a D6 is only a 12.5%, or is a 12.5% chance of getting hot usually, and a critical failure on a D20 is only a 5% chance, so it's going to be a much lower chance, but still worth it. So what we're going to do is this. We're going to say that for a multi-shot, you're going to get 1d4 shots. Now, you're going to say it's a triple barrel, right? How do you get 1d4 shots? Well, the reason being, with a d4, obviously the median here is going to be 2 to 3, so roughly 2.5. That's going to be your median but it also means that there's a chance that you only get one shot, or a chance that you get a bonus shot. And I like that. However, because it does get hot, do you necessarily want to throw a whole bunch of dice? Throwing more dice might actually be more dangerous to yourself. So you'll get 1d4 shots, and on crit failure, deals self-damage. So if you actually did switch modes, if you actually fired off all 4 shots, if one of them was a critical failure, you'll do like 12 dice of damage to whatever you're shooting at, and 4 dice of damage to yourself. Now, how bad is that really? So if we were to go back up here to walkers. I don't even know where they were. Here we go, medium walker. So, sample vehicles, here we go. So, this is a light exos... Oh, this is lots of them. Well, here's a light police walker. We would want to have something harder than that, though, I think. But either way, a light police walker has 100 HP. Okay? It's got 100 HP. And if it was using... I don't think it could use it. It is a medium vehicle, so technically... No, technically it couldn't. It has to be a huge vehicle. But if it was to get hit by this thing, or if it was firing this thing... Since it's a large gun, that means it's going to use D8s. 4 D8s maxes out at 32 damage. So it's possible that this walker could do 32 damage to itself, which would reduce it by 1/3 of its hit points. Either way, bad day. So maybe be careful when using this gun. Just saying. But that does give you the rotary aspect of it. So you can spin it up, you can blast out fire. It's a high risk, high reward kind of thing. And even the risk isn't really that high. I guess it just depends on how many times you want to roll the dice. So that one's super easy. We'll go ahead and mark that one as done. Next is pulse weapons, specifically the long shot pulse rifle. Surprised we didn't do this one already. Alright, fusion weapons, missile launchers. Okay, here. Phase plasma flamer. Then it was plasma weapons, but Starfinder already has plasma weapons, so we don't need to reinvent the wheel on that one. As a matter of fact, Starfinder has more plasma weapons than this does. Because this has plasma rifles and plasma cannons, but Starfinder also has plasma pistols, plasma knives, things like that. Photon grenades. Did we miss photon grenades? I don't think I put photon grenades even in there. Oh no, I did. Oh right, those are just going to be flashbangs. So we don't really have to worry about those. Pulse weapons. pulse blaster, pulse pistol, pulse rifle, pulse carbine, long shot pulse rifles. I wonder why I put these in here as this. Because what are pulse weapons? Is the reason I left them out because they're already kind of covered? Let's see. Pulse weapons are a family of advanced plasma weapons developed by the Earthcast. Okay, that's why I left them out. Pulse weapons are just plasma weapons. Which leads me to believe the reason why I put the long shot on there is because we probably do not have a pulse sniper rifle. Or a plasma sniper rifle. So, sniper weapons. Here we go. So we have projectile sniper rifles, and that's it. Yeah, that's why we put the long shot on there. There is no such thing as a plasma sniper rifle. So that's what we're going to do right now. So, long shot pulse rifle. Right? Yeah, long shot pulse rifle. Alright, and for this, we're going to need to have our weapon headers. And here we go. Okay. So, is there a level 1? There actually is a level 1 sniper rifle. So, that being the case, I will go ahead and borrow this level structure. Now, let's do some comparisons. So when we're talking about sniper rifles, we have two kinds here. There are the strikers, and then there's the Sheeran eyes. So, yeah. The strikers do less damage but have longer range. The Sheeran eye rifles do more damage but have less range. Which way do we really want to go on this one? Given that they are sniper rifles, I always tend to lean towards more range. That being the case, projectile. I want to do some comparisons. So here we go. Needler rifles. These are our long arms. Alright, here we go. A hunting rifle. So a hunting rifle does 1d8 damage at 90 feet. Okay? 1d8 damage, 90 feet, and that's at level 1. Now, if we go down to snipers, we have the Sheeran Eye Tactical Rifle that does 1d10 at 70 feet instead of 1d8 at 90. That's a level 2 rifle. If we're going to compare it directly, level 1 to level 1, we would go with the Striker, which does 2d4 instead of 1d8 at 100 feet. So a little bit more distance and more reliable damage. And that may be the way to go. Smaller dice, more reliable damage, and a little bit more range. So if we're going to do that, let's look up plasma rifles. And I went wrong. Here we go. Plasma rifle. Okay. So the first plasma rifle comes in at level 6. So that's not great. There's a level 10 plasma rifle though, and we... Or no, wait, hold on. We have a level 6. Okay, no, this actually works. Level 6, level 10, level 15. Alright, this is actually going to track nicely. This will track nicely. So, we're going to go ahead and say long shot pulse rifle red. Long shot pulse rifle yellow. Long shot pulse rifle white, and long shot pulse rifle blue. Now, as for damage, the level 6 does 1d10. Okay, and that's fine. We're good with that. 1d10 is good. But we need to make it a bit better and a bit more reliable. D5s are kind of awkward, so what I'm going to say instead is let's go ahead and do... Actually, these all have a really short range on them, so if we're going to make a sniper rifle out of this, maybe we should scale the damage down as we increase the range. So I'm going to go ahead and say that this is going to do... I'm going to say this is going to do 2d4 energy and fire. Okay? The range of it will be 40 feet. However, I think I'm going to borrow everything from this. I really do. I think I'm going to borrow just like everything from this. So the burn 1d4, pretty much all of this. Not that. Okay, and then we'll just paint this over here. Alright, so 40 charges, usage is going to be 4, bulk is 2, so I'm actually going to change this just to make it easier. Instead of having it be 40 charges and 4 usage, it'll just be 10 charges and 1 use. Less numbers for you to keep track of. Oh, Tux says one half of a D10. Technically speaking, we'll be using Roll20, which means that if I wanted to, I could say that it'll simply do 2d5 damage, and Roll20 can roll that, because it doesn't need actual dice, it just needs numbers, and it can run that through a program. However, I want this to be playable with real dice, so no imaginary dice. Now, that being said, you can use real dice to roll a d5. You simply take a d10, roll it, and you just kind of have the numbers. So 1 to 2 is 1, 3 to 4 is 2, 5 to 6 is 3, and so on. But it's not as intuitive. A lot of people don't think of it that way, and so I try to avoid using things like d5s. It makes things a lot easier. Technically speaking, though, A D1 is just a 1. A D2 is a coin toss. A D3 is a D6, but divided in half. So 1 to 2 is 1, 3, 4 is 2, 5, 6 is 3. A D5, or a D4 is a D4, a D5 is a D10 cut in half, like I just explained. A D6 is just a D6. D7 does not exist. There is no way to do a D7 properly. The best you can do with a D7 is roll a D8 and ignore the 8. But even then, from a mathematical perspective, from a physics perspective, you're still not getting equal probability weights with it. I mean, you are, but you aren't. And so D7 is just basically impossible. The same thing is true with the D9. D8, of course, is its own dice. A D10 is its own dice. 11 doesn't exist. And then D12 is the highest you really get. And then you can get 20s, and 20s can be used for a lot of things. 20 can technically be used for a D4, a D5. It can be used as a D2. 20s are very versatile, just depending on how much math you want to use when you roll it. But I do try to stay away from the imaginary dice when I can. Okay, so looking at these, when we look at the sniper rifles, this weapon has a range of 100 feet. However, as a sniper, it goes 500 feet. So that's a 5 times increase. This one has a range of 70 feet, and as a sniper, it only goes 250. That is only a 3 times increase. At the next level, it's 120 up to 1,000. That's an almost 10 times. It's not quite. See, times 2 would be 240. And 240 times 4 would be 920, I think. So basically it's an 8 times difference, give or take. And this is 70 feet to 500, so that's still only, or no, that's 70 feet to 500. See, 70 to 500, that'd be 140 to 10. 420 is 6. So that's 8 and 6. So if this was 4, this one could be 7. I think that's what we'll do. Is we'll do multipliers like that. We'll split the difference on these. So this one should actually be, because we're looking at the tier 6 and 8. This should be a times 7 multiplier. So the special is going to be sniper, and 40 feet times 7 is going to be 280 feet. Now, up here, for the long shot pulse rifle, I'm going to go with a 1d4. Actually, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go with a 1d6. Do a 1d6. Come on. Energy and fire. The range... let's see. Where's the plasma weapons again? Laser rifles, plasma rifles. Here we go. The range of it. These are going up by 20s. So that's what we're going to do, which means that the range of the level 1 is only going to be 20 feet. We're going to keep this the same. Well, mostly the same anyway. We'll change the burn damage that it does. So we'll copy, paste, paste, paste. This one is only going to be ×4, so this is going to be sniper. And it'll be 80 feet. Let's see, at level 10, this does 2d10. Now, I want to reduce the size of those dice as much as I can. 2d10 is a maximum of 20 damage. I can reduce that to 5d4. The range will go up to 60 feet. Wait, no, I'm looking at the wrong one, aren't I? Rifle, rifle. No, I'm looking at the right one. It's the caster up here that's kind of weird. Yeah. This burn I'm going to make into a 1d6. Make that into a 1d8. This one will be a 1d10. Alright, this range increment is going to go up to 60 feet. And then the real question is... what do the new categories look like? So we're looking at these guys. So this one goes from 140 feet to 1250. And I'm just going to get out my calculator rather than continue to do this in my head. I can do it, I just don't want to. So 1250 divided by 140. That is 8.9. Going to round down to 8. And the next one is 750 divided by 80. That is, rounding down, 9. So this is an 8 times multiplier and a 9 times multiplier. So I guess I'm just going to... well, if I split the... I can't really split the difference without going into a decimal number. And I really don't want to do that. So we'll call it an 8 times multiplier. So 60 times 8. Why am I using a calculator for this? It's going to be 408. Yeah, it's 480. I didn't need a calculator for that. Sniper. 480 feet. And then the last one. The level 16 plasma rifle, or plasma sniper. We have the caster, and we have the White Star here. So, we're going to use the White Star plasma rifle as our example. And this one does 4d10. 4d10 is 40 damage. If I divide that as much as I can into d4s, that's 10d4. Okay, we'll give it a range of 80 feet. And you know what? I'm going to redo these numbers a little bit. Because I've got 4, I've got 7, I've got 8. I'm going to reduce this one. And I'm going to say it's going to be 4 times 6. That's going to be only 240. But then it becomes 480 because this is going to be an increase in range and an increase in multiplier. Since that's 4, 6, 8, this one will be 10. And at a range of 80 feet, it's going to be sniper. $800 feet. Okay. And that gives us our long shot pulse rifle, which is pretty good. I mean, if you're going for a sniper rifle in general, this is the first sniper rifle in the game that is not projectile based, so now you have a projectile option if you want it. You have an energy option if you want it. The damage is not going to be as high as the projectile, because the projectile sniper rifle, if I can find it, grenades, here we go. So at level 16, this thing does a cap of 40 damage at 800 feet. A similar projectile weapon, same level, the Shabhad Horizon Striker Paragon class. 8d8 piercing damage with a cap of 64 from 1,500 feet away. It easily outclasses the Longshot Pulse Rifle in both damage and in range. However, this one does energy damage. It has a critical effect. And so it's not better, it's not worse, it's just different, which is what we're going for. We don't want it to be better, we don't necessarily want it to be worse, we just want it to be an option. And I think that's a pretty good option. Now, we are almost out of time for today. I got a lot of stuff I got to do today. Christmas Eve and stuff. There's also the Pulse Blaster, which is just a shotgun. Do we have those in here? Actually, we do have scatterguns. Scattergun utility, scattergun snub at level 8, scattergun impact at level 12, scattergun vortex at 15, scattergun grape shot at 18. Okay, so we've got examples here. And they do start at level 1, so we can easily do this. Alright, let's see if we can knock this one out real quick. So, Pulse Blaster, it's a scattergun. This should not be that hard to do. So, Pulse Blaster, and I'm not feeling creative right now. So I'm just going to call this one short. Pulse Blaster medium. Pulse Blaster long. Pulse Blaster reaching. I don't actually know if the ranges ever change on these, but I guess we'll find out. And we're going to use this same thing as well. So, let's look at scatter guns. This has a range of 15 feet. The next one, 15 feet. The one after that, also 15 feet. Okay, never mind. These are all the same. Alright, I have to give them a different naming convention then. But I'll think of something more clever later. Or you can think of something more clever for me in the chat. This is interactive. We can talk back and forth. Okay, so the scatter gun does 1d4 in a blast. The next one does 1d12, so that's a big multiplier. The next one does 2d12. Wow. Well, it is the POW gun, yes. But I need like 4 names. Alright, so here's what we're going to do. I'm going to keep the range the same. I think I'm going to keep the damage the same. I'm just going to change the damage type. So I'm going to say 1d4 energy and fire. The range is going to be 15 feet. The burn, I will get to that in a second, actually. I'm going to say, I want to keep this the same, and I'm going to say 4 charges, 1 usage. And then the bulk is 1. And then it's going to have a blast. And blast, I believe, means... Yeah, this weapon fires a cone that extends only to its first range increment. You cannot use it anywhere beyond that. Alright, now. This scatter gun goes from 1d4 to 1d12. That is a ×3 multiplier. And then, from 1d12 to 2d12, which is only a ×2 multiplier, and then it just goes up by d12s. So I think I'm willing to keep that, actually. So 1d12 energy and fire, 2d12 energy and fire, and then 3d12 energy and fire. So 15 feet for each one of them. And what I think we're going to do here is, does the capacity change on them? Yes, this one goes all the way up to 12 shells. So we started with 4, so if we went 4, 6, 8, 10, no, 4, 6, no, 4, what did we do? 4, 8, 12, 16? That's fine. So 4, 8 charges, 12 charges, 16 charges. And we're going to keep the usage at 1. Just better gun, better magazine. And what I think that I'm going to do is I'm just going to add half of the damage in here, more or less. So... yeah, on a critical, we're going to say burn for 1d2 burn for 1d6. Burn for 2d6. That's a 2d8. And then burn for 3d6. Actually, hold on a second. Let me make sure that I know what I'm doing here. Burn. Burn, 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 burn. That's not a link. Does burn go or deal damage over time for that many rounds, or is that how much damage it deals extra? Criticals, criticals, criticals. Here we go. Critical hit effects. Burn. Okay, the target gains the burning condition. Well, that makes so much sense. Okay, conditions. Burning. You take the listed fire damage each round, and you must be extinguished to end the condition. Okay. So you take that much damage every round. Which means that when we look at the 3d6... Well, it is a level 16 shotgun, so I think we can deal with that. And then these are all going to be blast. So there we go. And blast just means it's a cone that goes out in front of you. You cannot fire beyond the 15-foot cone. But at least you do hit everything in the 15-foot cone, so who knows? You might get to do that burning damage more often than you think, so long as you can, like, pin somebody in a narrow corridor. But we'll go ahead and we'll put a box around this one. And we can call that one done for the day. We'll come back to here. We'll color these in green. And I think we can call it a day. So, we got a lot done. I mean, excluding the marker lights. We got a sizable chunk done today. There's still a fair amount to go. JP says Napalm Blaster. I don't know if the Tau have one. The Imperial Guard might, though. I'm not sure. There's a lot of weapons out there that we haven't touched yet because a lot of them are vehicle weapons. Like, you say napalm. I don't know if 40k does napalm or not, but almost every race has some kind of flamer. And so I think a napalm blaster might fall into, like, the Imperial Guard's heavy flamer. So I would wait until we go back and maybe look at some of those vehicle weapons. There's also other things, like, we did an Astartes. No, we didn't do this one. Imperial Guards, here we go. We did the Astartes. But when we did the Astartes, we just did an Astartes. Like, this is the absolute most basic Astartes possible. And we gave them bolt pistols, we gave them bolters, combi bolters, storm bolters, because that's like the weapon that Astartes carry. That, and we gave them the chain swords, combat knives, things like that. What we did not do is we did not go into all the various chapters. Like, since you brought up fire, this is not a salamander. A salamander would have everything here, But a salamander would also be a little bit more resistant to radiation, a little bit more resistant to heat, and a salamander is going to have flamers. Lots and lots of flamers. So napalm blasters may come later when we go in to look at more specific types. And a lot of this stuff is stuff that might not even come up. Like, unless somebody wants to play a salamander, I don't really have to write up the rules for that. Unless somebody wants to go looking for a heavy flamer, napalm blaster kind of thing, I may not have to write the rules for it. It's kind of like when we go back and do vehicles. We're going to need to have vehicle rules for, what is it, a Lehman Russ? I think is like the basic Astartes tank. I'm not positive on that one, though. I should know better, but I don't know better. Because I think they have two kinds of tanks. I think the Lehman Russ is like an actual battle tank, and the other one is more like an armored combat, or an armored troop carrier. Either way, though, like, I will need to make those. Because those are pretty standard for every Astartes. But if I remember my Astartes right, the White Scars specialize in motorcycles. Or at least their equivalent of motorcycles. But if nobody's going to play a White Scar, and we're not going to be anywhere the White Scars are, and we're not going to interact with White Scars at all, I don't have to make them. So it kind of comes down to, I'm going to do as much work as I can, and as much work as I need to. But if it's not going to be of any use, I'm not going to spend the time on it. Now, flamers, we're going to have flamers. We will absolutely have flamers because so many people use them. It's just, however much it gets used will determine whether it gets made or not. The more obscure it is, the less it's going to get used. Like, we've got a power sword in here. We figured out how much a power sword weighs. I can make stats for it, but power swords are kind of common for Astartes. But when you get into like a lot of the other power weapons, like power knives, power axes, power hammers, power halberds, power staves, that's almost entirely Grey Knights. And so if nobody's doing Grey Knights, then, you know, there's no point in doing it. And Tuck says this entire series has been useless, though. It has not been useless. We're making good progress. And we're going to make more progress. We're just going to do it next time. So, I'm going to leave it off here. I'm going to take a break. I have people waiting for me, and I have work that I've got to get done for Christmas. So, I'm going to say thank you for coming out to the stream today. I know it was Christmas Eve. I didn't actually expect anybody to come, but you came, and that was important. Okay? That was special to me. JP says Warhammer may have too many options. It does have too many options, but options are good. Okay? And as long as we get the basics down for every race, there will be so many options you should never ever get bored. That's the goal. Don't want you to be bored. But anyway, like I said, gonna take a break here. If you haven't subscribed already, and I know that everyone in the chat has already subscribed, so I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to you, the person in the future coming back to watch this stream for some reason. I don't know why you're here, but I'm glad you're here. And if you haven't subscribed already, do subscribe to the channel. It helps a lot. Hit the bell icon, that way you get notified. If you know somebody else who is also into tabletop games, Warhammer 40k, or even just some of the other stuff that I've done, then share this video with them. In fact, it's Christmas. It's the time for giving. Give somebody my streams. Okay? It's free. You can't get better than that. Otherwise, though, if you're enjoying being here with me, if you like me, you like what I do, leave a like on the stream, leave comments down below, they always help. Join the Discord, especially if you want to play in these games. I am one person away, hopefully, from setting up the first gaming group. I got 3, I need 4. 4 minimum. So join the Discord, tell me that you want to be part of this. We're going to get the gaming group put together. We're going to start playing some of these modules. That's like one of the things I want to do or make sure happens next year. So, do that for me, and I will be putting up another poll to see what people want to do for the New Year's weekend. Same as this one. It'll be, do you want Saturday stream, Sunday stream, both, or neither? We'll see what happens with that one. I don't know. Well, I don't know what's going to happen. Either way, though, we're done for today. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays. Do enjoy your holiday, okay? Make sure to spend time with family while you can, because you never know when they're going to be gone. So cherish it while you got it. Have a good holiday. I will see you next time. And until then, take care.